All right. Good evening, afternoon, and morning to everyone. Thank you for joining us on another session of the Leadership Q&A with Josh Parnell and myself, Rob Cameronpour. We're glad to have you guys on here today with us, joining us. And again, I'd like to pass it on to Josh to kind of give us some entry remarks. And just again, thanks to everyone for joining us. And just remember, this will be a very informal session with Josh and I. Josh?
Yeah, Rob, well, thanks for putting this together, and thank you all for joining us. As Rob mentioned, my name is Josh Parnell, and I'm a leadership coach, trainer, and speaker. And I'm on a mission to reach people and build leaders. And so whether we have a few people on this call or whether we have a few hundred people on this call, I want to let everyone know that Rob and I are lifelong learners. Even though we're facilitating this, doesn't mean by any means we're leadership experts. If anything, we're just hungry to learn just like you are. And so if you're here, I know that you want to be a better leader. You're likely leading people, whether formally or informally. You might be leading people at work and at home. And so the beauty of leadership is all of a lot of the content and the materials and the resources that we learn over the years, it applies to both. We know how important communication is at work. It's equally, if not more important, at home. And so that's one example of many topics that we're likely going to be covering this evening. So looking forward to jumping in this session with you, Rob. I have a few questions over here. I know you have some questions ready to go as well. I'll go ahead and pass it over to you, and then we'll just kind of bounce back and forth if that works for you.
Sure. Well, why don't we start off with the audience? If they've got any questions, let's take their questions first. Anyone on the call have any questions? Or else we've got a lot of stuff that we can go through. Okay. All right, Josh, why don't we start? So I've got a pretty massive list here, so maybe we can alternate. I'll start off with the first one. So the question that came in is, how do you handle a toxic manager?
How do you handle a toxic manager? I'm immediately going to think with grace and with patience and as much understanding as possible. A story that I love to share in trainings that I do and speaking engagements that I do is how we have the power to be a coffee bean. And what I mean by this is we have a choice. We can be a carrot, an egg, or a coffee bean. There's a pot of boiling water, and the pot of boiling water represents the environment around us. It represents our community or our workplace. And if we're a carrot that goes into the pot of boiling water, we're going to come out of that pot of boiling water soft and weak and discouraged and sad. And it's okay to have these carrot days, but it's not okay to stay there. And what happens when you put an egg in a pot of boiling water? It becomes hard and tough and angry and mean. It's okay to have these egg days, and we probably have more egg days than carrot days, but it's not okay to stay there. But what happens when you put a coffee bean, which by the way is the smallest of the three, into that pot of boiling water? The coffee bean does not allow the water to change it. The coffee bean changes its environment. The coffee bean changes the water. And we truly have the power to be a coffee bean. It takes one person at a time. It's not going to happen overnight. Rome wasn't built in a day. Toxicity is not going to diminish overnight. But what we can do is focus on what we can control and try our best not to worry about what we can't control. So go in and model what effective, healthy behavior looks like. When emotions are high, logic is low, and emotional maturity is having feelings, but not letting our feelings have us. And it's very likely that the toxic manager has their feelings, have them, and we have an opportunity to model what emotional regulation looks like as well. When we're pausing, processing, and pivoting, we're pausing, literally and physically removing ourselves from a situation. We're taking a breath. We're processing what's going on around us. We're asking questions and challenging the thoughts that we might be having based on the situation we're experiencing. And it gives us a new perspective. And with perspective, the way that we view things drives the way that we do things, which means we can pivot accordingly. And this gives us an opportunity to model what this looks like for any toxic leader, peer, coworker, whoever that we're around regularly.
Excellent. Well said, Josh. Has anybody on the call ever experienced dealing with a toxic manager? And if so, what did you guys do?
I did. few years ago, very few years ago.
Okay. So how did you deal with it, Anne?
I'm just a human, so when it happened, I didn't go to work for a few days.
Hmm.
I never I said to myself that I'm a failure in that field, and I didn't meet the requirements of my boss. Well, in fact, um, he just wanted me to stay longer from my work. My shift is over, but he still wanted me to work. So I'm in the middle of, do I need to follow my job description that it's already end of work, or do I need to follow my boss, which is telling me to give an hour at least, extend an hour or more. So I was in that situation, and then basically I went to the human resource department to ask and seek advice. So they said that if that is the situation, then I should have informed them, because that is their job, for them to enlighten me on what to do, and for me not to decide on not going to work for a few days. It's like putting myself in danger because of my emotion. On that period, they checked on my credentials, and they found out that I'm not in this in the group where I was supposed to. So they moved me to the uh, department where I am capable of doing what I can. So it's a good thing that I went to the HR and state my grievances, state what is clouded in my mind. Then, but that was very years ago.
Thanks for
That's
sharing. Josh, I know you have a question that you'd
I
like
do. Yeah, and thanks for sharing. And I appreciate your vulnerability there. I know it's challenging for us to experience any kind of toxicity or negativity like that, whether we're at work, home, wherever. And so I appreciate you sharing that with us. It actually makes me think of another question that I'm gonna throw to the audience in regards to work-life balance, or really kind of a work-life rhythm. Something I've learned over the years is that balance is equal, and we the reality is both work and life is never going to be equal, but we can find a rhythm. And so when you are experiencing a situation like you did, when you were asked to stay later, but that exceeds the job description, what's happening is you are not getting clarity and direction, which are the two things that every person needs in any relationship, especially professionally. And you're also not feeling safe, and you don't trust this person. Even in my own coaching experience, what I want to always model is how to create safety and trust so that I can provide clarity and direction. And when you're not getting any of that, it can really cause a lot of wheels to fall off, for lack of better terms. So back to my question in relation to what you experienced, how have you been able to use that as a learning experience and exercise a healthy work-life rhythm or work-life balance in your own life?
I value the word resilience. So if there are common situations that is coming again into me, I just take a setback for a while. I take a setback. And then I'm not going to talk. I'm not going to utter anything, or I'm not going to move. I'll just be as it is. And then you said a while ago that when you wanted to understand what you are into, you have to be a coffee bean, right? But in my case, it doesn't go there yet. I just wanted to see the visual, the face of the person who is triggering me to do something. If that person, I can see that he's still just in that moment and he changes his facial, then it's my cue also to lower it down. If that person did not change his facial or anything that goes beyond his, however, verbally or in action, then I'm still on my guard. But if that person changes, then it's a triggering point. It's a point for me to really like, okay, you're also angry, then I'll step back. But if you're not, then I should do something that will protect me. So that's how I manage for over the years. But because now I'm into entrepreneur where I manage the business, so I always see myself in that situation, in that person. I put myself in there. I put myself in that person. So it's not easy, but I'm trying. So that's how I do for the past years.
Very nice. Interesting. I'd add something else to that. When dealing with a toxic manager, one of the things that people also should do is set boundaries. Set your boundaries with whoever the toxic individual is. Set your expectation with that manager so they know there's certain lines that they shouldn't be crossing. And I'm very glad in your case HR was able to help you, because usually they like to reside with the management side. So kudos to you
It is.
and having the courage to go and report it. So I'm glad there was a positive outcome in your case.
Thank you. It was just a luck, maybe, or I'm not sure. Maybe because I did not do anything from the job, so it's their first time me coming to them. So I think it's a valid and reason why I was there.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, thank you again. And Josh, I'm gonna throw it back to you and see if what's your question?
So question is vision. I think it's important that every leader knows how to cast a vision. The 3 questions I ask every client of mine is, where are you going? That's your vision. How are you getting there? That's your mission. And why are you doing it? That's your purpose. So I will throw this question to the audience and ask, how do you cast vision and get buy-in? Vanessa, I see you. I think this is a question.
I think she's busting over here. Well, Debbie wanted to chime in on the last question real quick about management. Can we back up like this much?
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead. I was the toxic manager. That was me. I was dealing with a crew that was also toxic, probably because I was. And I thought the only way to handle them was to be somewhat of a tyrant. I was, I guess I was called bitchy. I'm just going to say it. I was called bitchy. But I was getting a lot of, kickback all the time on work and hours and things like that. And I thought the only way to handle that was to, just say, hey, this is your job. This is what we do. Sorry, deal with it. And that's definitely not the way to handle it. So thanks to Josh and my amazing boss. I have made, almost a 360, and now I'm not a boss anymore or a manager. I'm a leader. Yeah. So that's how I handle my teammates now. And I don't handle them. I love them and they love me, and we're a great team.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And when you watch it from the outside, I just want to chime in. When you watch, usually when you're dealing with management, it's something they're struggling with. Like if you have numbers you have to meet or something, and you're not getting your team to do it, you're already struggling as management. So I think sometimes when managers come off as bitchy or mean, they're really just trying to get the job accomplished. And I think the one thing that Debbie has learned over the years is really about communication, like over communicating, like saying like to your team, hey, what's going on? This is, we have to do this, sit with me. What's the problem? What's the issue? Going to a much deeper level than just, hey, I'm the manager, do this. So
And the funny thing about it is when you do try and get to the root of the issue with the team, it has very little to do with work.
Yes.
Very, very little to do
True.
with work. So,
True.
and in that case, you're not only getting to know them as your teammates, but you're also getting to know them as people.
That's
You know,
right.
you get to know what's behind the technician, so to speak, which is an amazing thing. So now not only are you a coworker and manager, but now you're becoming friends, which takes, you know, their position and your position to a whole new level.
Awesome. And I think that's great, Debbie, that you had the courage to speak up about it and have that self-reflection and that self-awareness, which is super important. And you can only change if you come to that term that, hey, I'm the issue. I had the problem and I need to make some changes. So kudos to you and becoming a leader. So that's fantastic. I love that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And Josh had a lot to do with that.
Nice. Way to go, Josh.
Hey, I try. Debbie, I appreciate you for sharing that. Chadwick, welcome. Chadwick is another friend of mine, and so I'm glad you called my friend. So we just posed a question right before you joined us, and Chadwick, I might put you on the spot, man. This might be a good question for you. So I mentioned how important it is that we all recognize how much vision is important for a team. We're casting vision as a leader. There's a mission that's driving towards the vision, and there's a purpose tied in there as well. So my question to the audience is, how do you cast vision and get buy-in?
So, I mean, I'll take the spot. I mean,
Come on.
I wouldn't expect anything less from you, young man. I got a few minutes, so I'll jump in. Appreciate you. How do you cast vision, and how do you get people to see your vision and go along with it? Well, first of all, is it really your vision, or is it something that you've been shown and you're just a vessel for another vision that's really not? In my personal work opinion, my vision is to glorify God with what I'm doing at the end of the day. Hopefully everything I do on a daily basis, not just working, but I'm not doing what I'm doing for me. So it's not my vision. My vision is, what is my guest end game? What is the consumer? What is the person I'm talking with? I'm in a relationship with. What are they kind of expecting out of it as well? And what am I? I want to have a shared vision, right? Because my vision may be way different than what most people need or expect or want. So there's a lot of being on the same page and sharing that vision. And if everybody from the whole circle of however the process is working with is on the same page, then getting folks to see and share that vision with you isn't as difficult, I think, when you kind of break it down. How do I want to see that vision from the outside in?
That's so good. And man, I'm not going to apologize for putting you on the spot, because I knew you were going to deliver, and you did just that. So thank you for sharing that, Chadwick.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
So Rob, send it back to you, my friend. What you got?
Awesome. All right. So the next question I had come in was, how do you lead difficult people? So now we went from a toxic manager to a toxic employee. Who wants to
I'll
take
take
this?
this one.
Go
I'll
ahead.
jump in. You lead them very patiently. You start very patiently, and you explain a lot to them. You explain the way you need things to be, policy and procedure. I found policy and procedure saved my life with teaching technicians or whoever how to do things the way we want it. Because if they follow it that way, which we always say is the right way, because we're always doing things for the right reason. In my business, I can say we do things from our heart. So when I teach you to do something, I'm never teaching anyone to do anything that they shouldn't do. So I don't know, I can't train toxic people. So my thing is, if you are a very toxic manager, other than her, she's not that as toxic as she thought she was. But I can work with you because I can explain to you our vision, what we want and why we want it. And it's a good vision and we're doing it to help. And, good people will jump on board, I feel.
So what happens when the individual is resistant to change, no matter what you tell them?
That's a hard one. You have to let them go, in my opinion. You can only work so much with someone. I invest a lot of time, but I have girls that that have worked for me. And I can tell you, I had to actually let them go. And in life, I still conversate with them. I have one of my hardest girls to work with, who drove everyone on our team crazy, extremely toxic. And she will still reach out to me every holiday or just randomly to say, hey, God is so good. Thank you for being in my life. And she comes and gets advice from me. She's actually going to do her own cleaning company. So people mature, they grow up and they change. It's hard to work with toxic people though. You can only do it for so long. You just got to have a lot of patience.
What
I
about,
wasn't sure. Oh, sorry, Rob, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, what about performance management? What's your take on that?
That's what I was going to kind of jump in and say. I was like, kind of setting the expectation of, okay, here's the benchmarks. Here's some things we can tangibly measure. Number one, on black and white. The other is not so much black and white, from attitude, everything else, right? So there's also benchmarks that need to be set in that as well. So at the end of the day, if it's not meeting the expectation, and doesn't mean you're a bad person, you're just not a good fit here.
That's right.
At the end of the day,
I wasn't sure.
I still want them to still feel valid about themselves, right? They are valid people.
So Chadwick, you just said a key word that I'm going to touch on here in a second. I wanted to go back to Vanessa for a second. I wasn't sure if there was any parallel by the fact that Debbie admitted she was a toxic manager and Vanessa was real quick to talk about how to lead difficult people. Did anyone else notice that, or was that just me? I'm just throwing it out. Okay. Anyway, but I will say this, in regards to how to lead difficult people. One thing that has really helped a lot of folks that I work with is understanding the difference between directives and direction. And for a lot of leaders, we give directive after directive after directive. I'm telling you how to do your job. I'm telling you what to do. That's just a directive. And I'm a big believer. I'm stressing the word telling for a reason, because I believe that if we're sharing information, it's collaborative. And I can provide clarity and direction through questions. And I think one of the greatest opportunities for every leader is to ask more questions. I literally keep this book on my desk on a regular basis. This is a fantastic book for leaders because leaders are also coaches. It's called The Coaching Habit. And there are 7 specific questions that this author, Michael Bungay Stanier, lists in this book. And I ask a lot of them on my coaching calls. I mean, I'm asking a lot of questions. The misconception that a lot of folks have when it comes to being a coach is I'm going to hire a coach who's going to give me a lot of advice and give me a lot of answers. And the reality is a great coach asks a lot of questions. A great coach helps you shift perspective, and you already have the answers. My role as a coach is to help you discover them from within. But in order to lead someone who is difficult or toxic or negative, communication is always going to be my answer. How are you communicating with them? In addition,
good transition statement there.
A good transition statement. So,
yes.
In order to, I see what
yes.
you're doing. So,
gotcha.
In addition to asking questions, are you assuming positive intent? Are you seeking first to understand, then to be understood? When you ask questions, it's important to listen. And there's a difference between hearing someone and listening to someone. If I'm hearing someone, I'm simply waiting for them to stop talking so I can tell them what I want to say. If I'm listening, I'm receiving information, I'm processing information, and I'm utilizing that information to best serve that person. And furthermore, and I'm going to put a bow on this, when you're listening to someone as a leader, we have to listen empathetically. Empathizing with someone doesn't mean that we necessarily have to experience the same situation as that person, but it does mean that we can imagine their circumstances and accept their feelings without invalidating them. And so that takes me back to the word that you mentioned, Chadwick, validation. There are so many people in the workplace who don't feel heard, they don't feel understood, they don't feel acknowledged, they don't feel seen, they don't feel validated. And when we're asking questions and we're truly leading and listening from a place of empathy, we're able to connect with them in a way that many of their former leaders or bosses never have. And when we show up differently, they begin to show up differently.
Excellent.
So, Rob, I had a list of questions, and then Google signed me out, and I don't know what my password is, so I'm just gonna wing it now. I don't have questions. I'm just gonna hopefully we can figure this out on the fly.
We're gonna put you on the spot.
Yeah, I'm feeling it, man. I'm in the hot seat. It's fun, Chadwick. You did well. I'm struggling over here.
Karma.
That's right. Okay, so I have a question, and this goes for anyone, but I would love to know onboarding. Do you do it? And if so, what does it look like? I am personally a big believer in the fact that it must be done, but a lot of leaders will say, I don't have the time to onboard. And my encouragement is to say, you're not making the time. So what does onboarding look like for you and your company?
Onboarding for us looks a little bit, well, we have a process where when we hire someone, we do a phone interview first. And then we do a face-to-face, they meet with Debbie. And then if they make it to the next interview, they meet with me. When
Okay.
we onboard, it's a lot of paperwork that we're giving. We have a checklist that we've made. So we make sure we've assigned them a buddy. We've spoken to them about where to park. We're very thorough about explaining, because the thing is, when you onboard people, they're brand new. We've been doing this a while. We can't just assume, oh, they know this, they know that. We want to make sure they come in comfortable. They make sure they come in, they can ask questions, that they have someone on their team. We're saying, hey, this is your go-to person on your team. This is who you're going to ask any questions. If they don't have the answer, come right to us. So onboarding for us is a lot of just making them comfortable with our team. We even recently have started having, we have meetings, and we have had people come to the meetings before we even hire them. If they go through the first interview process, we want them to meet the entire team. We want them to sit in to see what our work culture is, so they understand what they're getting themselves into. This way, we don't waste the time with people who don't want, there's some people who don't want to be in meetings where we're all positivity and, all that in the morning. They just want to come do their work and go home. Maybe they're not for us,
I love that. I love the fact that you include all team members in the shadow process, maybe even in the interview process. Something I did at my corporate job, which, I'm a solopreneur right now, so I don't have a lot of folks on a team. But when I was hiring, we made it a point to make sure that every person on the team was a part of the interview process. Because when you think about it, if you're the hiring manager or the leader of this team, you likely might be the one who's ultimately making the decision to hire or not, but you're probably not the one who's going to be working with this team member as much as the rest of your team. In a lot of cases, that's true. And so if you can include everyone in the interview process, that's going to go a long way. It does a couple of things too. It shows this prospective hire how much trust you provide to your team members, because you're empowering them to be a part of something that's very important. And it also gives your team members the ability to be a part of something very important. They're asking the questions in the interview. I don't ask a lot of the questions. I thank the prospective hire for coming in. We do some introductions. I thank them at the end of the interview, but during the interview, the team is the one who's asking a lot of questions, because they're going to be the ones who are working with them more to begin with.
Yep.
Follow-up question for you, Vanessa and or Debbie. If you're assigning someone a buddy, which I think that's a great idea, how do you prep the buddy to be trained and ready to adequately and effectively answer questions and bring someone on board?
They have to have been with us for a while. We don't put our new technicians with, somewhat new other technicians, because it doesn't work. So there are certain technicians that have expressed that they have no problem being a buddy. There are other technicians that said, I don't ever want to be a buddy. So again, that's asking a lot of questions, getting to know, your technicians, finding out what they do want to do and what they don't want to do. So that's kind of how we do it. So if they're comfortable with having, or, bringing in a buddy, basically training, they work with me one-to-one, and I teach them exactly step to step how I train, how we deal with the questions, how we answer the questions, and then we just kind of let them fly.
I like it.
So I'm gonna add something to this, because I've worked for some big organizations, and one of the biggest problems, even today, is I remember when I started, it took about 6 weeks for me to get a laptop. And then I've heard people, having issues about 3 months in and still no laptop. So one of the things I've done with, with the organization or the company I've started, is to ensure that people have their hardware and software, and everything they need prior to their start dates. And I think another thing which is important is having informal one-on-ones with them when they start. You know, they get to know the team, they get to know their supervisors, managers, and having that one-on-one with them. And I've also created this expectation where I ask them, what is your expectation? I do this with everyone new to the group is, what's your expectation of your supervisor, your manager, and then the manager and the supervisor also, what's their expectation of this new hire? And we share that. And anytime there's an issue, we always have something to go back on. We have something to go back to say, hey, you know what? These are part of the expectations. So it also allows them to let their supervisor or manager know that, hey, I expect to, let's say, grow here. I need a development plan, et cetera, et cetera. So it holds everybody, all three levels, accountable.
I love that, Rob. I want to highlight something that it's very important, and that is we talked about asking questions earlier, but furthermore, we want to make sure that we're asking the right questions.
Yes.
And you'll notice that the questions that you were asking is, what expectations do you have for your manager or for this person, and vice versa. You're not asking, do you have any expectations while you're here? The difference is one is an open-ended question that warrants some dialogue, and the other is a simple yes or no. And the more open-ended questions we can ask, the more information we're able to receive. And when we receive that information, we process it and we utilize it. That's when we're truly listening so that we can best serve that person. So I love the fact that you're mindful of the questions that you're asking. You're being very intentional with the questions that you're asking. And I also want to highlight the fact that what you described was pre-boarding. So we're talking about onboarding, but when you're giving everyone their hardware and their materials and their resources, everything that they need to be successful in the role that they have been hired for, they have not only proven themselves to get the job, now it's about improving themselves beyond that hire, but you're also pre-boarding them so that there's no reason that they cannot be set up for success from day one. So I love that. To me, if I think about pre-boarding, getting even the onboarding paperwork, all that stuff taken care of prior, any kind of a light amount of maybe a video training of some kind, nothing that's going to be, over, they haven't officially started yet, but something that just to welcome them to the team, maybe a handwritten card, maybe a bag with some, little goodies with the logo of your company on there, something like that, that just says like, Chadwick's down with that. So, I mean, I don't want to make it sound like it's like, oh, wow, I get hired, I get a Frisbee. I mean, the whole thing is this. It's like, look, we want you to know we are so excited that you're here. We hired you for a reason, and we believe in you. We need you. I mean, we hired you for a reason, so we genuinely need you. I think Steve Jobs was famous for saying, we don't hire people so we can tell them what to do. We hire people so they can tell us what to do.
That's right.
We want to hire people whose strengths trump our weaknesses. And so we're excited when someone joins a team. And so we're throwing them, a little goodie bag that Chadwick approved of, and then we're able to, welcome them when they officially onboard.
One of the pieces of my welcome package is actually a picture frame. So when people see that first, they're like, oh, do I put a picture of myself, my kids? I'm like, no, this is not for any picture, but I actually get them to put their top 5 values in a picture frame.
I like
It's
that.
there for them to look at all the time. And it's also to ensure that you're living those values on a daily basis when you're doing your work. So anytime you're doing anything outside those values, it can be pointed out that, look, these should be your non-negotiables. So it's very important for people to, live their values and understand what their values are and see it every day when they're coming to work.
That's so good. So good. I'm gonna throw it to the crowd.
Yes.
Any questions that y'all have as y'all tells you that I'm from Texas. Okay. So if you're in Canada or the Philippines, I know Rob and Ann, I'm talking to you primarily. When you hear y'all, it's a dead giveaway. I'm in Texas. Okay. Sorry, not sorry. Any questions from y'all as we're in this leadership Q&A? Well, I have one. Oh,
I appreciate you, Steve. I was just saying, I appreciate the shout out. I got to run. Hate to cut it short, but appreciate you letting me give my 2 cents.
Hey, man, your 2 cents is worth way more than that. So I appreciate you for being on and hope to see you next time, my friend.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for
We'll
joining
talk
us.
with you tomorrow, actually.
That's right. Yeah, tomorrow.
Fantastic. See ya.
See ya.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Chadwick is a client of mine, so we meet every Wednesday morning.
Nice.
So here's a question, and it's actually come up quite a bit in a lot of my coaching sessions here lately. As a leader, I am of the opinion where if I'm leading a team of people, and again, this is just my opinion, I'm not saying it's factual. I would love to hear any thoughts on this, but I'm of the opinion where as a leader, if I'm leading a team, I believe that leadership is truly a full-time job. So there's a lot of responsibilities in the day-to-day that have to get accomplished. But if I'm leading a team of people, if I'm doing it effectively, I'm likely going to be leading people full-time. And that's why I'm a big believer in delegation, a proper delegation. If I can delegate something effectively and accordingly to all of my team members and empower them by delegating authority, I'm not giving them a task, I'm giving them responsibilities, I'm giving them authority. They are now in charge of something. Even though I'm responsible for everything under this umbrella, they're in charge of all these things. So I'm of the opinion where I would like to have my pulse or my hand on everything, but not be in charge of anything, if that makes sense. So I have an idea of what's going on with everything, but I'm not in charge of anything because I'm delegating authority and responsibility. So what I'm doing, and we could look at this two ways. I can look at this and say, well, Josh, you're just working yourself out of a job, which is a scarcity mindset. Or I can say, this is an abundance mindset. I'm growing and developing leaders, which is the role of a leader to begin with. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on what I just shared? Any differing opinions? Any questions, comments, life advice? I'll take it all.
I love it. I love it. I agree with that 100%. I really do. That's the only way to be, is to be able to teach people what you can do so they can do it, and it makes them feel more confident in what they're doing. I think delegation is so important when running a team. Probably one of the top things you can do, because anyone can come to work, do a job, and go home. But when you give them more responsibility, it shows more trust in them. It lets them grow. We've gone through a lot of that in our business, where it's been us. I started the business with Debbie. She's done a lot of helping. Her job had to change from technician to running technicians, being management, to doing estimates, to being dispatch on the phone. So it's a lot of back and forth. So when you're switching jobs a lot, don't you think that you feel more, confident about yourself when you mastered what you did and you learned it? And now she's teaching it to other people. And there's a lot of joy in that too, when you can teach someone and see them get excited. You mentioned earlier about being excited. I think being excited is one of the top things too. If you're excited, your team's excited. If you come into work and you're, hey guys, your team's not excited. You have to get them excited, have them see your vision, and keep moving with it.
Great.
Good.
Yeah, your energy is contagious.
Absolutely.
You know it is or not.
I like it. So I believe that everyone, and you mentioned that you're an entrepreneur as well. I think we're all entrepreneurs on this call. Here's a question that I know every entrepreneur has faced at some point or another. How do you get over imposter syndrome?
I don't know if I'm over it yet.
Great answer, honestly. How do you handle it? I think Debbie, in all seriousness, I think you made a great point. We're probably never fully going to be over something like imposter syndrome, because the reason we experience it to begin with is because what we're doing is new to us, and we tend to gravitate away from the unfamiliar. And this prevents us from taking action, because typically we don't take action based on fear, lack of confidence, which is imposter syndrome, a lack of preparedness or readiness. I know for years I was guilty of, I would not take action because I wasn't quite ready and I wasn't quite prepared, and this isn't the right time. And I'm regularly saying, hey, the right time is right now. Take action. If we take action, confidence and motivation tend to follow. But that doesn't excuse the fact that imposter syndrome is still a real thing, and we likely experience it on a regular basis. So let's disregard the word overcome. Rather than asking how we overcome it, how do you manage it? How do you manage when you feel these bouts of imposter syndrome? What do you do to get past that?
I jump in. I jump in with 2 feet now. It used to terrify me. And now I know within me that I'm going to be better once I get past it. Once I learn it and I know it, I'm going to be better for it. So now I dive right in.
Nice.
Sometimes you need to go to the situation and just do what you can.
Yes.
That's how you do. If you don't go to the situation, if you don't put yourself into it, as what Debbie says, you have to jump. If you need to swim on it, you have to swim on it as well. So
Do what you gotta
because
do.
you will never know what will be the effect, or what will be the outcome of it if you don't go through it.
And I think that imposter syndrome has a lot to do with failing. I think we're taught that if we
Yes.
fail, that's a bad thing. And I look
Yes.
at failing as, if you try, you fail, you learn. And I think,
Yes.
that really will take a lot of that imposter syndrome away when you just educate yourself on something, know what you're talking about, and fail. If you fail, you address it. You say to everyone in the room, hey, look, I totally just messed up. Look at me. You don't try to hide it, sweep it on the rug. That, you're a real person. People get that, I think.
I think,
and sometimes, as the old saying is, experience is the best teacher. So you have to experience it in order for you to become a teacher yourself. You can.
That's good. Hey, Ann, I'm a quote person, and I'm going to steal that quote from you, because I think you nailed it. That was excellent. And I'll say this too. I think that, what you're explaining, Vanessa, is we have an opportunity to redefine what failure really is, or what a lot of people view failure as. And people, if we fail at something, then some of us might say, I failed, therefore I'm a failure. If you lose at something, it doesn't make you a loser. And I think too many times we allow these actions to become our identity, and we really hinder ourselves from ever breaking free from limitations that we're really just putting on ourselves. Because if we're not failing, we're not learning. And if we're not learning, we're not growing. And if we're going to grow through anything, we've got to be willing to go through anything. So being able to redefine what failure really is, I think is key. And furthermore, the similarity between faith and fear is that they both believe in a future that hasn't happened yet.
That's right.
So why would you choose faith?
Yep.
It's
Fear is
interesting.
what? Fear is what? False evidence.
False evidence appearing real.
Yeah, love it, love it.
So I was actually on a call with somebody from Kenya today, and this individual used to work in the States for 25 years at a major bank or wherever it was. For 25 years, the feedback this person received that, why don't you take initiative? You never take initiative. And the response was always like fear of failure. They never wanted to take, and up to now, they're still afraid to take that initiative because of fear of failure. And that's something that a lot of people, I've coached, one of the biggest fears they have is the fear of failure. But I said, how else are you going to learn and grow without failing? Right. And I think it's in our head. It's a future event that's never happened before. Like that hasn't happened, and it might not happen. 95% odds are that it won't happen. Why are you afraid to take that first step? What's the worst case scenario? So you fail, you learn, and you grow, and you move on. Right. So it's a big hurdle for some people.
Rob, you just asked a question that I always challenge clients to completely shift. What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
What if we ask, what's the best that could happen?
That's right.
Like, what if we thought, rather than worrying about the failure, what if we thought about the wins and the success?
Yes.
What is the best that could happen. Because Debbie and Vanessa, you mentioned fear is simply false evidence appearing real, and we're always going to find evidence in the things that we believe. And so too many of us start to believe something which dictates some thoughts that we have. And one of the greatest mistakes any of us can make is assuming all of our thoughts are true. So we're thinking something based on limiting beliefs, but we don't yet know how to challenge those limiting beliefs. And that's why, oh, we have another visitor in the room. So, and so that's why it's important. That's why it's important that we're mindful of the fact that just because we think it doesn't mean it's true. And just because we see something, that doesn't mean that it's true and it's something we need to believe in. Like when I say that we're always going to find evidence in the things that we believe, when I was much younger, I didn't have the confidence in myself because I truly didn't believe that I was intelligent enough to do X, Y, or Z, right? And so I would find evidence that backed that up. Oh yeah, my test grades weren't great, or well, I'm not even going to try there because I can't do it. I could easily find evidence that supports my belief, or I could have and should have challenged those beliefs and thought, you know what? I mean, I didn't even really apply myself. I mean, the grades were a result of me and a lack of effort. I mean, if I really apply myself, would things have been different? And again, we're always going to find evidence in the things that we believe. And this is where we have to learn how to challenge the thoughts that we're having to achieve the results we're desiring.
Absolutely.
Question for the group. And this is, I'm actually going to read something that I learned yesterday, and I wrote it down because it really stuck with me. It really hit me in a good way. So Daniel Goleman is famous for, he's kind of a very well known for emotional intelligence. And right now, emotional intelligence is something that I think is so important in the workplace. But he's also famous for determining 6 different leadership styles that a lot of leaders can operate with. So in Daniel Goleman's research and results, he says there are 6 leadership styles. One of those styles is a coaching style, and so I know Rob, you would appreciate this as a not former, as a leadership coach like myself. I don't know why I'm saying former. As a leadership coach, fellow was the word I was looking for. As a fellow leadership coach, man, English, am I right? It can be a tough language sometimes. Okay.
Gonna be former after today, Josh.
It's been a long day, folks. All right. So what he shared was, of the 6 leadership styles, the coaching style was shown to have a markedly positive impact on performance, culture, and the bottom line. At the same time, it was the least used leadership style. Why? To quote Goldman, he said, many leaders told us they don't have the time in this high-pressure economy for the slow and tedious work of teaching people and helping them grow.
Yes.
And the key word there is time. And something I share with every hiring manager that I work with a lot of small business owners and people who are formally leading people. And a lot of those people hire me to work with their people because they say, Josh, I just don't have the time. I don't have the time to teach, to coach, to train, to lead, to manage. And so I say, hey, that's where I come in. But the whole point of me bringing this up is, to quote again, many leaders told us they don't have the time in this high pressure economy for the slow and tedious work of teaching people and helping them grow. I want to ask the group, why is it important that we avoid saying I don't have time, and instead we start saying I'm going to make the time to grow and develop my team?
You have to. It's your team. I love you, Josh. I would love for you to come and speak to the girls, but you have, but that's my team. You know what I mean? Like, you have to create that bond. It's so important in the workplace. You have to lean on each other. You have to learn how to communicate and how to work with each other and to lead each other and to deal with each other. I mean, we spend most of our time at work. You know what I mean? Like, I spend more time with my teammates than I do with my family.
Yeah.
And it's the facts. So for me to say I don't have time is like saying I don't have time for my family, basically. So you have to make the time. It has to become a priority.
Yeah, I think one of the things a lot of managers struggle with is their time management. You know, if you look at people's calendars, they got meetings from 9 to 5, and a lot of those are useless meetings that they don't even need to be attending. So the question they need to ask themselves is, am I needed? Am I required at this meeting? Right? And even if you're required at the meeting, how long should you be attending that meeting for? So the important aspect of a meeting is having a proper agenda. And then the question is, when do you need me to participate? Like, what am I needed as a part of that agenda?
Mm.
And this way you can carve out that amount of time for yourself, and you don't need to sit in a 2-hour meeting if they only need you there for 5 minutes. Right? And
Rob, I have a question for you based on what you just shared, because I
Yes.
completely agree with you. Let's say you are not the hiring man, or you're not the leader or the manager or the boss of this particular team, but you are supposed to, based on the requirements of said day, you're supposed to be in this meeting. And what do you, how do you manage a leader who always has a bunch of meetings and it feels like it's kind of a waste because we talk a lot, but we don't walk the talk? And so you're starting to wonder, like, what's the point of us even being here? What can you share that will help us be able to redefine what a meeting is, and also help our leaders redefine what a meeting can be?
So is a question, Josh, just for clarity. So I'm the individual contributor and I've got a leader that attends a lot of the meetings. And how do I tell them? Or can you just,
No, yeah, and I felt like the question was clear as mud, so I don't know why you need me to clarify. So, Rob, yeah, no, I appreciate that. So, no, the question really was, I'm someone who I'm kind of supposed to be at these meetings based on the leader who is leading the meetings, but it just feels like every meeting I go to is a waste of time because we don't do anything beyond the meeting, and that's why me and my peers have meetings about the meeting that just happened. And then it's this kind of like workplace water cooler gossip talk, if you will. So how do you manage that?
again, it's all about communication. It's all about providing feedback. It's all about understanding what is the purpose. I absolutely, and I've told my team this, if you just send me a blank invite to a meeting, I will not attend. I will not accept it. What is the purpose of the meeting? What is the agenda of the meeting? And even if you put timelines to it, put timelines in terms of what are you going to talk about at what times. So it all goes back, Josh. I think again, people are too afraid to provide feedback. Why am I required in this meeting? What value am I bringing to this meeting? What value is each individual that's invited bringing to this meeting? And if there is no value, don't invite them or don't go. And I always tell my staff, if you feel that you add no value to that meeting, don't go. Period.
And I think what you're doing too, Rob, is you are sharing with your team. You're creating a safe space, and
Absolutely.
platform for them to voice their opinion about said meeting or anything else. I think that's critical. Again, we want to create safety and trust.
Yes.
And when you can create that as a leader, that goes such a long way. I love that you said that you shared that.
Yeah, and the other aspect, because I worked with in groups of like various lines of businesses, and I always say if the other line of business has an issue, they can come to me. I'll address it. And you always have to stick up for your team, because at the end of the day, you're responsible as a leader for your team. So make sure you give that sort of freedom to your staff, to your team, and also back them up. Stand up for them if
Yes.
needed.
Yeah, love that. Well, folks, we are 2 minutes to the hour. Speaking of boundaries, want to respect your time. And so we're going to make this a 1 hour long session, which means we're going to bid farewell right now. I want to personally thank all of you for being on the call. And this is the first of a handful that Rob and I plan on doing. So, you know, we like the informal approach. We like the collaborative, engaged, interactive type. And so next time we have it, we'd love to see you again. If you would, invite your family and friends, anyone that you know who might be able to benefit from a leadership Q&A. So I just want to say thank you. And Rob, I'll pass over to you, my friend.
Absolutely. Again, I'm just going to echo your words. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you for taking time to join us. How's it going, buddy? And we greatly appreciate it. And, if you've got further questions, you can always send it to Josh and I, and we can post the answers for everybody. But greatly appreciate your time, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a great night and have a great morning, everyone.
You
You too.
Cheers. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.